Hey, deep divers, welcome back. You know how we do it here. You share something you're curious about, we take a deep dive into it together. And today we're diving into the world of strength training with something called the Candido Linear Program. A listener sent this in. My guess is they're looking to build some serious muscle, maybe even try a new routine. Either way, we're going to break down this program step by step so you can get a feel for how it works. So right off the bat, this program lays out four main things it's built on: weekly workouts, rest, overload, and then a surprising amount of detail about each exercise. The workout split is the first thing that jumps out at me. It's got heavy upper, heavy lower, control upper, and control lower days. Now here's the interesting part. It doesn't actually tell you which days to do which workout. So you've got some flexibility to decide what works best for your schedule, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, and having that flexibility is actually a big part of what makes this type of program effective, especially for building strength. See, this program is all about what's called linear progression. Basically, you're pushing your limits with heavier weights over time in a systematic way. And as you do that, your muscles adapt and grow stronger. It's a really solid approach for seeing consistent gains.
And speaking of gains, let's talk about this rest section for a sec. It's not just about taking days off. This program emphasizes rest during your workouts too. Like, they're recommending 3 to 5 minutes of rest between sets, even on those control days, which seems like a lot at first, right?
It definitely seems counterintuitive. You'd think you'd want to keep moving, keep that momentum going. But that's the thing about rest. It's not just about catching your breath. It's about letting your muscles actually recover and rebuild from all that hard work. Think of it like this. Those tiny micro tears in your muscles, they need time to repair themselves so they can grow back bigger and stronger. Rest is what allows that to happen.
So it's like the more you rest, the more you grow. That almost feels counterintuitive when you're used to pushing yourself hard.
It does, doesn't it? But trust me, giving your body that time to recover is absolutely crucial for making progress in the long run. It's like you wouldn't run a marathon every single day without giving your body a chance to rest and repair, right? It's the same principle with strength training.
Okay, that actually makes a lot of sense. So speaking of pushing limits, the overload section is where this program really gets down to business. It really emphasizes how important it is to gradually increase the weight you're lifting over time. But here's where the detail gets really interesting. It actually recommends a specific range for increasing that weight, 0 to 10 pounds, depending on how your body's feeling. You don't always see that level of personalization in a workout program.
It's true, a lot of programs just take a one-size-fits-all approach, but everybody recovers at their own pace, and this program really seems to get that, which is refreshing.
Yeah, and that kind of goes back to what we were just saying about rest, right? It's all about listening to your body.
Here.
All right, so let's get into the nitty-gritty of this detail of each exercise section. This is where the Candido program really sets itself apart, I think. Get this. On those control days, it calls for something called paused variations of certain exercises. And we're not just talking about your average pause at the bottom of a squat. It actually says, for example, to pause a barbell row at the highest position, really squeezing those back muscles at the top.
Ah, yes. That pause at the top of the movement is where the magic happens. You're basically increasing the time under tension, which is just a fancy way of saying you're making your muscles work harder for longer.
So it's like adding an extra layer of challenge to those control days, even though you're not lifting as heavy.
Exactly. You're forcing those muscles to work even harder during that pause, and that can lead to some serious strength and muscle growth over time.
Okay, I'm starting to see why this program is so popular. It's strategic, it's adaptable, and it seems to be based on some solid principles of strength training. Now, one of the things I really like about this program is that it doesn't treat you like a robot. It gives you some choices within the structure, especially when it comes to those horizontal and perpendicular pull exercises. We're talking barbell rows, pendlay rows, dumbbell rows. They even list pull-ups and lat pull-downs as options. It's like a choose-your-own-adventure for back exercises.
And there's a reason for all those variations. For one, it keeps things interesting. Nobody wants to do the same exercises day in and day out. But more importantly, all those variations make sure you're hitting your muscles from different angles, which can help prevent imbalances and make sure you're developing those muscles evenly.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's like cross-training, but for your back, right?
Exactly. And speaking of cross-training, let's move on to this accessory exercise section because this is where things get really interesting.
Yeah, this part of the program doesn't mess around. For lower days, they're recommending exercises like stiff leg deadlifts and jump squats. Talk about explosive power.
Those exercises are so key for building overall athleticism. Stiff leg deadlifts target the hamstrings and glutes, which are essential for lower body strength and power. And jump squats, forget about it. They're like regular squats, but with a turbo boost. They'll help you develop explosive power like you wouldn't believe.
And for upper days, they recommend things like face pulls, which, if I remember correctly, are all about those rear shoulder muscles, right? The ones that often get neglected.
You got it. Face pulls are great for improving your posture, too, especially if you spend a lot of time hunched over a computer like me.
So it's like this program is thinking about the bigger picture of our overall health and movement, not just lifting heavy weights, which is cool.
It totally is. It's all connected, you know? You can't just focus on one aspect of fitness and expect to be truly healthy and strong.
So, deep divers, what does all of this mean for you? Well, this program, the Candido Linear Program, it's clearly built to help you build serious strength. But it's not just about lifting as much weight as possible. It's about doing it in a way that's safe, effective, and sustainable in the long run. It emphasizes those big compound movements, the power of linear progression, and the importance of rest and listening to your body. But it also recognizes that you're not a machine. It gives you some flexibility and choice within the structure, which is key for staying motivated and engaged in your workouts. But here's a final thought for you to ponder. This program is obviously super focused on strength training, which is awesome. But how could you incorporate other elements of fitness, like cardio or flexibility, alongside it? How could you take the principles of this program, the focus on progression, rest, and listening to your body, and apply them to other areas of your fitness journey to create a well-rounded routine that supports your overall health and well-being? Something to think about, deep divers. Keep those questions coming, and we'll see you on our next deep dive.
And it makes sense when you think about it. If you're constantly pushing yourself to the max without giving your body a chance to recover, you're going to burn out, you know?
Totally. So it's about finding that balance, I guess, between pushing hard and knowing when to back off and let your body do its thing, which actually segues perfectly into the next thing I wanted to talk about, this overload section. Now, this part really drives home how important it is to gradually increase the weight you're lifting. That makes sense, right? Like, you don't just jump straight to the heaviest weight you can handle. But here's where they get really specific, which I appreciate. They actually recommend a range for increasing that weight between 0 and 10 pounds, depending on how you're feeling that day. You don't always see that level of personalization in these kinds of programs, and I think it's really cool.
Yeah, it's definitely a more nuanced approach than just saying add 10 pounds every workout or something like that, which is just not realistic for most people. Everybody recovers at their own pace, you know, and I think this program really takes that into account.
Exactly. And that kind of ties back to what we were just talking about with rest, doesn't it? It's all about listening to your body and paying attention to those signals it's sending you.
100%. You know your body better than anyone, so if you're feeling beat up, it's probably a good idea to back off on the weight a little bit that day. On the flip side, if you're feeling strong and energized, then hey, maybe push yourself a little harder. It's all about finding that sweet spot.
I love that. Okay, so now let's get into the nitty-gritty here with this detail of each exercise section, because this is where things get really interesting, in my opinion. So they have this thing where on control days, they want you to do these paused variations of certain exercises. And I'm not just talking about your typical pause at the bottom of a squat or anything like that. For example, for barbell rows, they actually want you to pause at the highest point of the movement, like when your muscles are fully contracted. I don't know about you, but just thinking about it makes my muscles burn a little bit.
Oh yeah, those paused reps are no joke. They're brutal, but in the best way possible. Seriously, though, they're super effective for building strength because you're basically increasing the time under tension, which is just a fancy way of saying that you're making those muscles work harder for longer.
Right. And so it's like, even though you're not lifting as heavy on those control days, you're still challenging those muscles in a different way, which is pretty smart.
Exactly. And that can lead to some serious gains in the long run.
I'm starting to see why people are so obsessed with this program.
Okay.
It's got a lot going for it. Okay, so we've talked about the importance of rest, the concept of overload, and how to really maximize those control days with paused reps. So there's actually a lot more to unpack in this program, but one thing I have to point out before we move on is the variety of exercises it includes, especially for back work. For example, you've got your horizontal pulls, like barbell rows, pendlay rows, dumbbell rows, even pull-ups, and lat pull-downs are in the mix.
It's awesome, right? You're hitting those back muscles from every angle imaginable.
Exactly. And then on top of that, they've got a whole section for accessory exercises.
Yeah.
That seems carefully curated. Like for lower body, they suggest things like stiff leg deadlifts and jump squats, which just scream explosive power. to me.
Right. They're not
Yeah.
messing around. And the best part is these aren't just random exercises they've thrown in there. They all serve a specific purpose. Like those stiff leg deadlifts you mentioned, those are amazing for targeting your hamstrings and glutes, which are key for lower body strength and power. And jump squats. Oh man, those will get your heart rate up. They're like the turbocharged version of regular squats, and they're incredible for developing explosiveness and athleticism.
Yeah, you definitely wouldn't want to do those after leg day. And then for upper body, they've got things like face pulls, which, if I'm remembering correctly, those are all about those rear delt muscles, right? The ones that tend to get neglected.
Bingo. Face pulls are a game changer, especially if you're trying to improve your posture or counteract all that hunching we do over our phones and computers.
So what I'm gathering from all of this is that this program is really well-rounded. It's not just about lifting heavy weights, it's about building a strong and resilient body that can move well and feel good.
Exactly. It's about the bigger picture, you know? You can't just focus on one aspect of fitness and expect to thrive. You've got to address all the pieces of the puzzle: strength, mobility, flexibility, and this program seems to get that.
It really does. So deep divers, we've barely scratched the surface of this Candido linear program, but hopefully this deep dive has given you a better understanding of what it's all about and how it can help you achieve your fitness goals. Remember, the key takeaways here are consistency, proper form, and listening to your body. Don't be afraid to adjust the program as needed to fit your own individual needs and goals. That's all the time we have for today, but we'll be back soon with another deep dive into a topic that's sure to get those brain muscles working. Until then, stay curious, stay informed, and keep those questions coming.